Well, we are joined now by Alan and Susan from the Shetland Family History Society, and they are in fact in their premises in Shetland. So thank you so much for joining us at the conference today. And Susan, I think you're going to tell us a little bit about Shetland.
Yes, that's right. Well, we're really not just next door to Scotland. We're an awful long way. There's about 17 inhabited islands, and we're 170 kilometres away from Scotland and about 300 kilometres from Norway. So really, when you see our map, often we're portrayed in a little box, but actually we're halfway to Norway, and we have lots and lots of Norway connections. So there is a map which you can really appreciate quite how far north we are. We're connected really with the islands of Orkney by sort of just our heritage, and we're mainly sort of undulating hills, lots of scenery, coastline. We don't really have very many trees. We have lots of strong wind and quite a few sheep, and they've really destroyed our forests. But we now started to grow a lot more sort of vegetation, and I think really have made Shetland look extremely beautiful through that.
Excellent. So that's great because that helps us just to see exactly where you are. So you're a long, long way from where we are. So we're just outside Glasgow. So it's Scotland, I think, sometimes can seem like a small place, but it's a long way from where we are. Hopefully we can visit one day. I think that would be lovely. I'd love to come and visit you guys in your archive there. So, Alan, I think you've been working on a really interesting project, which is sharing Shetland surnames. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, as with all family history societies, we have a duty to interact with our members and the general public at large. And in the early days of the society, we held the usual lectures, meetings, and we got outside the premises to meet with other people. The most popular of our evenings, really, were where we chose a surname and invited people that we knew were related to it to come along with their family trees and talk about it. Fast forward a few years, heritage tourism is becoming big business. And one of the local hoteliers suggested that we should do something along the lines of a campaign that had been successful in Glasgow, called Sharing Glasgow. It was something similar to that. She suggested Sharing Shetland, whereby locals and tourists could mix. And she saw as part of that Sharing Shetland surnames, which would be led by the Family History Society and would showcase one surname per month. As it happened, the only part of her idea that ever came to fruition was the Sharing Surnames, led by the Family History Society. But it quickly became obvious that one surname per month is far too many. In fact, one a year is quite enough. Susan's been heavily involved in arranging several of them, so I'll let her explain to you how we go about this.
Yes, well, we get together usually at the beginning of the winter and pick a name, and it's a name that would be not too common in Shetland. And we meet once a week researching into this particular name. We read lots of journals, magazines, we go through the research on the internet, anything that we can find. It includes memorabilia, it includes connecting people and using our database to find people. We try to alert people in other countries where there has been descendants that have moved. They might like to organise a holiday to come back. We choose June for the best time to come and visit Shetland, and we make a whole weekend of it. So a Saturday will start with an actual exhibition in a local hall, and we tend to go to a hall where that name is most prevalent. And then we set up the exhibition. We then invite speakers who have any sort of literature to share with us. We sometimes have pieces of music connected to that name. We have poetry. We have any sort of reading. And then we have the famous Shetland 8 o'clocks, which is tea and coffee and home bakes. Shetlanders absolutely love home baking. And then on the Sunday afternoon, we go into more relaxed mode where everybody is just looking at the exhibition, meeting up with other friends. Everybody with that name has often come along. And we have Sunday teas, which is another round of home baking.
That sounds good.
Alan enjoys home baking. And it is absolutely phenomenal. We sell lots of our publications. People are so generous with donations, but I think more importantly, we get a lot back, because all these people come with their family trees and their pencils and they're interacting, and they give us a copy of all their research. And I mean, I think Alan will tell you particularly about the last one that we had, which followed the name Arthur and Arthurson. And for the last couple, we've actually had a sponsor from a local firm who has been connected with that name as well. So it's actually grown and grown. And when Alan pointed out that we can only do one a year, he's quite right. They are big now. So
Yeah. That sounds great. I mean, I don't have any Shetland ancestors, but I definitely want to come to the next one, just for the home baking.
You might have.
You might have.
Yes. A couple of things about it. We don't actually charge an entry fee, and we don't check if people are members or not. It's an open invitation to the evening event and to the exhibition. We usually get over 100 people, which is quite a number for a village hall. It usually entails putting out extra chairs and the actual trustees of the society standing around the edge because there just aren't enough seats. You pay for the tea in the village hall, and they get such a good attendance. Now, normally when you do a conference, you pay for the venue. They usually pay us for the venue because they get so much income from it, from selling the teas and the home bakes, plus the footfall going through. We have our publications for sale at the event and a collection box, and that pays for it. So they're popular.
Brilliant.
We're a population of 23,000. So that puts into context that if you're getting 100 to a particular event, which is not what you might call a mainstream hobby.
No.
Everybody.
Yeah. That is amazing. What a wonderful, that must be a wonderful resource as well that you're making as the years go on.
Yeah, the information that we get in is added to our database. Some of the stories appear in the journal, and it's always difficult to get stories for a journal. So this is almost writing itself. And we produce boards that we also interact with our local museum. They have a temporary display case or cases that we take over, and in discussion with the museum curator, they fill them with artifacts relating to the surname. Now, these are things that are in the store that don't normally see the light of day, and it's a complete eclectic mixture. For example, at the last one, which the surname was Arthur, there was a pair of crutches that were issued to a wounded soldier after the First World War. We would have had his artificial leg as well, but unfortunately my cousin used it as the foundation for a pigsty, so that was the end of it. We had ration cards from somebody with the surname. There was memorabilia from a shop, a lot of stonemason tools. The surname is particularly associated with stonemasonry. That's in the museum. We accompany it with printed boards with stories about 7 or 8 people with the surname, and all our folders that we produce for the event of family trees. And these sit at the museum for as long as they want the exhibit, which is usually 3 or 4 weeks. And then it all returns here to the society. The boards decorate our corridor. And now that we're actually sharing the building with other people, they tell us that they stop on the way out the door to read our boards. So they're obviously interesting what goes on there.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is really amazing work that's going in there.
Mentioning the last conference, it was some of my relatives. The surname is Arthur. Our keynote speaker came from Sydney in Australia, especially to present it. And I had relatives, I'd never met them before, but they came from California for the weekend, especially to attend it. I've met them since, but that was the first time I'd met them, was when they came for that.
Oh, that's wonderful. So what are some of the other surnames then that you've looked at?
Well, when we first came to Shetland in 1982, we had just bought a really nice old stone house in Lerwick, and we'd only been it's in our second week, and a lady came down and asked to take a photograph of the house, and we said yes, but why? And it turned out that she had heired this house when she was a young child, and it was to a family, she had emigrated to Australia, and their name was Gaudi. So we kept in contact with that family, and when we had our Gaudi weekend, which was about 4 years ago, I think 3 years ago, I contacted her. She had subsequently died, but her nephew picked up the email and he came over, and his family had gone out to Australia and started up a factory producing lemonade. So when he came over for the Gaudi weekend and week, he brought old Gaudi bottles and he donated them to the museum. So things come back, which was really interesting. And I've subsequently been a couple of times to Australia and have met up with him again. So it's a real two-way process.
We also had the nephew or grandnephew of Zilla Gaudi. You won't have heard of Zilla, but she was a phenomenal painter. She's well known in Patagonia in South America that she painted. And the nephew brought several of her paintings, which were on display for the event. She's also famous as being the first tourist that went to St Kilda. And there's quite a bit online about her. She climbed the cliff face with the men, which the St Kildan women thought was hilarious.
I think she was noted to be the first woman that had ever gone down to collect eggs on St Kilda.
St Kilda is definitely another place I'd like to visit.
Our events try and tie in with some local event. Of these sharing Shetland surnames, the first one we did happened in 2014. So the surname chosen was Bolt, which was the surname of the first Shetland man killed in action in the First World War. In 2016, we chose Henry, which tied in with the 400th anniversary of the arrival of a minister of that surname, and most of the Shetlanders with that surname are descended from him. So it's a two-way thing, which helps tourism, helps the local, the Henry family were wanting to celebrate in some way, so it helped tie in with that.
Wonderful, that's amazing. So I think as you've published a book about this as well, Alan, I believe, or the Society.
Well, the Society published, it was what the suggestion we based it on. I wrote a book of Shetland surnames. It's just a standard publication listing all the surnames, the origin of the name, and what we know about the earliest recording of it. So it's available from the Society.
Excellent. And you've got other publications. I was having a look there at your MIs, your monumental inscriptions, and of course these are so valuable. So these are available again from your website. We'll make sure we link to that in the handout. And you were telling me that you've completed Shetland with that project.
Well, we've completed the inscriptions, yes. And we've now started, about 18 months ago, 2 years ago, we started to photograph them all, and we're 3/4 of the way through.
Amazing.
That's gone very well. It's we have a project coordinator, and she has been contacting people in that area to actually try and get them to take responsibility for taking photographs from their yard. And we're now working on getting that online on our members area.
Brilliant. That's great. What a wonderful project, because they're such a valuable resource, not only for people who've died before 1855, but also you get those links to people who have moved abroad. Really amazing resource. And I see that there's a discount for members as well. So your membership, I think, starts from £12. And so you get those resources that are online, discounts on publications, and also you get the journal as well.
The journal's online for, obviously, for e-membership, and
Yeah.
that's what we're encouraging people to take out now.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Especially if you're not in Scotland and it's to be sent abroad, it makes a lot of sense to have the e-membership where possible. And so, of course, you've got future projects coming up as well. I know you've already worked very hard indexing the census, and you've got the 1911 on its way as well, so that's quite exciting as well, something to look forward to. Lots of exciting projects. It's really fascinating. I'm definitely going to dig a little bit deeper and see if I can find any Shetland ancestors lurking in my past. That would be fantastic.
Yes, fingers crossed that you find some.
I'll keep looking. So we'll make sure that we link, obviously get in touch. Do you have any sort of research as well for somebody who isn't local to Shetland? If they're a member, are you able to help them out at all if they've got a question?
Yes, one of our trustees is our research officer. So on our website are all the details for contacting her, and she will answer. She's absolutely brilliant at turning around an email and will answer queries. And we also hope to start our booked appointments for visiting should you come here on holiday.
Mm-hmm.
She's had some very quick results. The research officer is very good at knowing who to contact, and sometimes she might not know the answer and the records might not show the answer, but she knows someone who can provide information that leads you to the correct source to answer the query.
Yeah, that is often the key, isn't it?
Yeah, I think really, and you know, it's very obvious for us that Shetland, being surrounded by water, so many families have stayed and they still live in the same parish. And mostly when people visit, sometimes even the person that's on duty will be able to say, well, actually, we're a cousin. And within quite a short space of time, they can put them in contact with somebody who they'll be having a cup of tea and the scone.
Home baking. Maybe we should all just pretend we've got Shetland ancestors and we'll just come for the cup of tea and a scone.
You've been really, really welcome.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us today. And I think you're going to be around to answer any questions as well. So if you've got a question, please just ask, and Alan and Susan will help us to answer them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This shows typical Shetland scenery, the cliffs and the sea at the bottom. Shetland is full of historic buildings. That's Scalloway Castle. Lots of picturesque scenery here.
Our inter-island ferries run between all the islands, our 17 uninhabited islands, but our main sort of 5 big ones, really big islands. They're actually running with a roll-on, roll-off ferry.
But it's impossible to get between islands without some form of sea transport. The ferries are helpful in these days of cars, but for most people with Shetland ancestry, they'd have been relying on rowing boats, possibly sailing boats. So the journey time is much less with these motorised boats. This is the audience gathering for the Arthur event. You'll see a few blank chairs. They were actually left for the speakers and for the trustees to sit on. Shortly after I took this picture, we had an influx of visitors and we had to put out extra chairs, and the trustees ended up standing anyway. This picture shows Bobby Hunter, who's the Lord Lieutenant for Shetland, and standing next to him is his third cousin, David Jones, who came from California, specially for the event. The other man is David's father, Larry Jones, also from California. This is the interior of the Shetland Croft House Museum. David and Larry Jones seeing how their ancestors would have lived in the 1850s. This is a picture of the audience from the event 3 years ago, and you can see again packed tables.
That was for Robertson.
Robertson.
This was a piece of music that had been composed at Gallipoli by a Robertson man, but had never actually been played. So we found our Margaret Robertson, who is a professional teacher, and she played it, and it was absolutely beautiful. This was at the very end of a very successful weekend. All the actual group that really take on the Sharing Shetland Sounds and work throughout the winter to actually produce all the material.
Wow, it's a lot of work.
And what we didn't say, a lot of the fun that we have is in getting ready. It's a very light-hearted meeting, and people find strange things, strange stories in newspapers or magazines, and make connections they didn't realize existed. So it is definitely a two-way event. We benefit from it.
This is a picture of our superb new premises, and the panels that you see on the wall are the collaboration with our sponsors. When we decide our Shetland surname weekend, we try and find a sponsor, and then we produce these panels depicting different people, and these panels all sit in the museum for a month or 6 weeks, and they're enjoyed by the visitors to the museum as well, and then we can get them back to decorate our corridor.
Oh, that's great. That's like a permanent display then for any visitors coming.
That's right.
This is a close-up of one of the boards. The house in the picture is actually a double house. The one on the right was the original building, built about 1766, and was associated with the one surname for nearly 300 years, 250 something years.
This one was really quite interesting. This is a find of a ship that went, that obviously had overturned, carrying coal to Bombay. And it actually was only recently discovered, sadly, after the Malaysian airliner was discovered.
Not discovered, they were looking for the remains of it.
Yeah. So they actually found the Westridge, which
had a Shetland captain called John Arthurson.
Yeah.
Goodness.